Hey everyone, welcome to the Betsperts Golf Open Championship DFS preview. I am Ryan Noonan, excited to be joined by my friends. First, the man behind all the data here at Betsperts Golf. It is our friend PGA Splits in the process of the world's longest move. Ron, how are we doing, buddy?
Doing well. Yeah, this week, I know it seems like we say this for every major, but it's really as epic as it gets this week. I mean, you have the birthplace of golf, the world's greatest links course, pretty much an unpredictable strategic masterpiece that's going to test every player's creativity and discipline. And then you have so many storylines. I mean, is this Tiger's last start at the old course? You have all the live drama. Will this be the last major where, kind of everyone's participating together? Will the coastal winds have an effect on the score? Will it get to 20 under? Rory, can he win another major? So for me, this is as good as it gets this week.
I'm excited about it too. It's been a great string of major championship golf this year. I think obviously with Augusta always, and then I think, the US Open and PGA, those are fantastic courses at Southern Hills and then Brookline, just outside of Boston. And then of course, there's no way to kind of put the bow on this other than going obviously to St. Andrews for the 150th. Joining us here in this spot, going to be taking over these hosting gig moving forward. A much younger, more handsome man who is apparently really good at handicapping golf, but extremely inept at picking football teams. Though we have to give it to Zach Wilson. It has been an incredible week for Zach. Is Byron? You know him as the Model Maniac, and if you watch this, we've been joined by Byron's presence here multiple times this season. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, no, just living one of my best weeks as a Jets fan. And I mean, it couldn't have happened at a better time, with the Open happening. And it's just, like I said to you in the studio earlier, it was just such a good week for a Jets fan to have in the off season. We typically win the off seasons pretty much every year, but this was like the Super Bowl year for us. So it's Zach's doing God's stuff for us. It's awesome.
Ron, you've been traveling. Are you in the loop with the inner workings of Zach Wilson's offseason?
Not too much. I caught a brief glimpse of it yesterday, so I'll pass on it for now. But yeah, NFL is getting closer, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, we'll hold off on that for now for sure. But let's talk again. I cannot be more excited because there are so many variables in this tournament. Is I think one of the harder. We did our betting show earlier today. If you're joining us and watching this live, you can check that out on our YouTube page. You can also find that anywhere you listen to podcasts as well. This is a very, very difficult event, I think, to handicap because, well, obviously Augusta is unique. We know, right? It's like a 90-man field when you kind of include all the, 40 guys that you can cross out at the jump. And then US Open and the PGA, we have a fairly standard golfer archetype that works there. The skill sets that work pretty much translate from year to year. The Open Championship is very unique. And then St. Andrews is even a little bit more different, right? We're a little concerned if the weather doesn't become a problem, does this, Butte get kind of beat up a little bit? Ron, is there anything that we see in the weather or anything from a wave advantage standpoint? Well, I do think it's probably advantageous to still stack waves. I've heard talk around microwaves, which sounds like microwaves this week too, where you're like, looking at like, hey, who's a couple guys within an hour of each other because of the the variations that we can have for wind here. So, and again, because they do it a little different where we're not actually doing, first and 10th, everyone's going out kind of just gradually off the first. So is there anything from that standpoint and the weather standpoint that we should be, giving a little bit extra attention to this week?
Yeah, that actually happened a few years ago where I think if you were not in like a 90-minute wave of guys going off, like that big group of guys in that 90-minute area, like those were the guys who are in the top half of the leaderboard. So, but no, nothing yet really. Like when you look at the winds, it looks pretty even throughout on Thursday, Friday. Different sites are saying different things, but I'm seeing anywhere from 10 to 20 miles an hour, maybe a few higher gusts, which isn't too bad for the location right there on the coast. So, obviously this is the thing you want to check all the way up until tomorrow evening. But for me, I don't see anything specific yet. It looks, if you're playing Showdown on Thursday, it looks like the morning is going to have a little bit of an edge, very slight though, which is typical. So again, that's just something everyone needs to just keep watching for now, but nothing at the moment.
And Byron, how about for you? Is there anything with that question I posed to Ron. And then what kind of golfer archetype, what kind of skills, metrics are you kind of honing in on this week? Because there are so many so many ways to skin the cat here, right? When we look at distances really mattered, and then Zach Johnson wins. And there's a lot of variation this week.
Yeah, no, there's like a few tiers you can get into. From a wave split perspective, definitely going to really favor, in a few lineups, definitely, like you said, the micro stacking of things where you want to get involved with some AM guys on Thursday, because if you can get a good read on Thursday's weather, you never know what can happen on Friday. So maybe you can embrace that volatility a bit there. Then from a second wave of a weather perspective is, for instance, like a Tommy Fleetwood. If the wind's going to blow, I want Tommy all over my lineups. But if not, and the boys are going down to 20 under par, I'm probably not going to have him as many lineups, because there's just certain guys that are going to make more birdies, and there's going to be guys that are way better at scrambling. So I think that's going to definitely influence how I build my rosters and change my model settings. This is the most I've changed my model settings in recent times. Usually I just find a setting and go with it. And now, as we're finding out new info, we kind of constantly changing things. So it's going to be fun. Till Wednesday night, we're going to be grinding. So
yeah, early start too. Reminder to folks too. This is obviously, you probably learned that last week. Same thing here, right? You don't have the ability to wake up super early on Thursday morning to make sure no one withdrew, or if there's any late wave information. You're waking up, you're already late. Half of the guys are already out on the course. So reminder to play to those tee times. Also want to remind you too, before we get into the player pool here, we're going to start the golf grinders like the three of us. The season doesn't start or stop with the end of the major championships. We're going to keep going. And we're going to continue to do that over at betspertsgolf.com. But we know a lot of you start to shift your attention. It starts to be, it's not the swing season. We still have the playoffs to come, but we want to get you in there and kind of our swing season offer. We want to start it right away. We started this week. For just $1 per month, you can get access to everything on betspertsgolf.com. We are still, this is our first year. We're only a couple months old. We have lots of things in beta that we've just started. We actually have a search engine tool that just came out today that we would love your feedback on. That's actually free for anybody to get their hands on and start to play around with. We're already working on building the second version of that. Ron's been instrumental in building that and kind of leading that for us, because we want to make his job easier. And he has lots of different ways that his brain works. And he wants us to be able to split this and split that and split that. And hopefully it's going to make all of us more money. So get over there and play with that over on betspertsgolf.com. Check it out. $1 a month until the end of 2022. Not the end of the golf season, not the end of the playoffs, but all the way through the end of the year. So cannot recommend that enough. We think you'll enjoy some of the stuff that's on the site. Again, access to our premium Discord, all the picks there, all the premium articles, content, tools, etc. So, all right, gentlemen, let's get into the player pool here. It is Rory's world, and we're all living in it this week. I think just the form, the narrative, a lot of things surround Rory. He is, I think, properly the highest priced player here on the board. Scotty Scheffler just a tick below him. John Rahm right up there at 10.8 as well. JT Morikawa, Spieth are the other guys that make up the 10K range. How do we approach this, Byron? How do we start at the very top of the board, knowing that there should be some ownership, specifically with Rory? He is by far the favorite in the betting markets, and just a lot of arrows pointing to him this week.
Yep, a lot of arrows pointing to him, a lot of arrows pointing to his ownership. I'll let Ron get to Rory. I know he's big on him this week. I've been doing it in the majors, and I don't know if it's hurt me or if it's helped me, but I just haven't played him because he's just that popular. And we mentioned earlier that this is going to be wild. If the wind somehow randomly picks up, if he has one or two bad bounces here and there early in the week, you could easily miss the cut. If it's a birdie festival out there, you can have a bad putting day, and the next thing you're just behind the 8-ball early on Thursday. So I'm definitely going to embrace, I'm probably going to do my best to dodge a bunch of chalk this week. I'm not even like a Cameron Smith kind of guy that I'm obsessed with. I'm probably not even going to play guys like that because it's just going to be chaos. So I'm going to embrace that. I feel like I've said this to you guys before on the show when we've had chaos. It's just live in it, embrace it. Scotty Scheffler is going to be half the ownership of Rory probably. Do I think is Rory 2 times better than Scotty? No. I'm all for Scotty. I think if he doesn't play with John Rahm, he plays well. The last 2 times he's played with John Rahm, he's missed cuts, and those are the only 2 cuts he's missed this year, which is disgusting. So John Rahm needs to stay away from Scotty Scheffler. And then when it comes to John Rahm, I don't want anything to do with him at a wedge fest like this, because we've discussed, his wedges are just not up to standard, not anywhere near the elite level we're looking for a guy that's 10-8. So definitely going Scotty Scheffler. And then JT's injury, I don't know, are we in that bracket yet? But JT's, after a poor performance last week, after mentioning he was a withdrawal from the Travelers or wherever, not that promising. You never know what's going on there after mentioning he's got a back niggle, and then the next thing he has a terrible week. So especially if he's going to be high owned as well, then I'm happy to dodge those bullets too.
Yeah, I think definitely the top tier. I mean, more than ever, because it is such a high variant event. I mean, you get caught in his weather issues that I think avoiding the chalk does make a ton of sense. Would you agree, Ron, that Rory definitely is going to be the highest owned in this tier? Maybe rivals Spieth, but again, we're talking about a $1,000 difference.
Yeah, and it's like when you look at the whole first top half of the board, it is pretty spread out, as far as ownership goes, like Rory's around 19%, which, yes, it's pretty much the highest up there, but, it's not like 25% or anything. And so
he'll be 25 or 30 in high stakes stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like for me, I've never bet on him ever, but this year or this tournament, I should say, it's just like everything's lining up. He's been top 8 at each major so far this year. When you think about it, there's only 2 par 3s on this course. So there's 16 holes where you're going to be able to take driver if you want to. And yes, the fairways are very firm, and a lot of the shorter hitters, they're going to be able to keep pace here because you're going to get so much rollout in the fairways. But Rory is just so good with that driver. And the fact that he could use it on 16 holes, we're talking about, 7 of the par 4s play under 400 yards, with some of these, depending on how they set it up, being drivable off the tee. So, when you look at him from that standpoint, from approach, he's the top approach player in my entire model. He's gained over 30 strokes on approach in his last 7 events. And just current form, his open past history, just kind of everything for me is lining up. And, the fact that I think he's underpriced at 11-1, honestly, when you see these other guys around him, Scheffler, I think Scheffler has the creativity to play on links courses. I just think he's in a little bit of a down spell right now. Rahm, I can't, when he's lost 2 out of his last 3 off the tee, I just, things aren't clicking for him right now. So for me, it's Rory, and then I'm dropping down to Spieth. He's the other guy at 10K, and I know he's going to be highly owned as well. So I'm going to have to get different as I get further down the board. But just with Spieth, he's the most creative golfer in the world, in my opinion. And that's why he's had so much success at these open courses. His obviously the open record is unbelievable. He can hit every shot in the bag. And just when you talk about these massive greens, 13,000 square feet on average, just his ability to, whether it's lag putting, whether it's, 100-yard pitch shots from an uneven lie, I have the most faith in him out of anybody to, have success on these type of greens.
So you got to get different elsewhere. What's the balking point on either of these guys? Because to Byron's point, I think Scotty's half of what Rory is from an ownership standpoint. And then when you look at what I think Jordan ends up being compared to Morikawa or even JT, if people really start to buy into the JT back thing, they're just guys that you're just saying they're going to be, massively part of your core. You're going to be massively overweight, or, do you just feel like you have a pretty good sense of some guys down the board that you think are going to be lower owned? Because those guys are, you're looking at starting 2 guys and you're like, you could be approaching 45% ownership combined there.
Yeah, you have to get different. If I plan both, which I'm planning on it. And I think there are options we'll get to as we go here that you can mix and match with. But just those 2 guys, I think when you get into these, you have to pick at least, even if it's just 2 players, 2-3 players that they're going to be chalky, but you're willing to swallow that chalk, and you have to get different in other places. But those are the 2 guys, and they're at the top. But those are the 2 guys that I'm going to be high on this week for sure.
Yeah. And for all the reasons you highlighted, I mean, statistically speaking, you can't poke really a hole in either guy for all those reasons. So, Byron, are you comfortable starting below the 10K range? Obviously, we start at the very, very top of the range. Below that is probably, we can make the case in the last month, the hottest golfer in the world is Xander Schauffele, who just rolls out of bed and wins all of a sudden at 9-9. Are you comfortable skipping the 5 digits and going to the 9Ks?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at the guys that have won in this range, if you kind of turn the 9K range into the 8.9K, you got Sam Burns in there who's won 3 times. You got Cameron Smith who's done multiple things, and Patrick Cantley's been playing fantastic golf. We got Xander who's obviously going to go for a 3-peat in as many weeks, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on, but he's going to be same territory as Rory. So I'm not going to probably start with Xander. I'm allergic to ownership. I play very aggressively, and it's just, there's 2 different, it's great that me and Ron are going to have these kind of viewpoints because it allows people that have different playing styles to kind of embrace each one of us. But, if you're looking at a guy like Patrick Cantley, who's going to be got that negative major stigma, is he going to do it again? Every time he tees it up in the major, he's not doing well. He's been playing very good golf. At some point, this guy's got to get over that bump, right? And it's going to be a different vibe, I think, maybe out there. You are at the old course at St. Andrews. It's a historic event, but he played well last week, and I really like to see that from him. And he's got win equity, and he's going to be under 15% owned for a guy like that in the 9.5K range. I mean, sign us up. Got Shane Lowry, who's won one of these things before, but is he going to do it again if it goes low? If it gets windy, I'm a big fan of Shane. If it's not necessarily going there. And then at the bottom, we've got Dustin Johnson, who I think we can start off with the live talk now, where I think a lot of these guys are going to have that stigma attached to them. And I'm kind of in, as a DFS player, you're going to put your morals aside and pad the wallet, hopefully. And if you can get a guy that's an elite player like Dustin Johnson that's going to be single figures in the bottom of the 9K range at a course that suits his powerful game, and he doesn't necessarily have to chip as much around the greens, he can putt it on, and I think he's played fantastically well here before in the past. So everything about DJ is kind of lining up as a great DFS pivot. And then Hideki Matsuyama as well, another one of those guys who's just recently gone to live, and if the wind stays down, I'm all about Hideki as well. The guy's going to ball strike this course to death.
Yeah, that's interesting. Is there anyone in this range too, Ron, that you maybe, depending on how the weather plays, is maybe part of your core? Or is there anyone here that you're comfortable kind of starting your lineup with?
Yeah, I think you can completely skip that top half if you wanted to. Cam Smith is a guy another high ownership guy, but he's so deadly with the wedge in his hand and in just his short game, and kind of similar to Spieth, with his creativity. When he tends to miss, and of course you have these spacious fairways here. So when he does miss, he kind of misses left, which is an advantage here because you're basically playing on another fairway and you're not really in much trouble. I think I was reading, Byron, you even getting into this where he switched drivers and he's, saw some improvement last event at the Scottish Open. So, I think he's somebody who, is ready to win that first major this week. So I think you could very easily go with Cam Smith and Cantlay, who of course has that stigma where he just hasn't performed up to his potential in these major events, but his form coming in is really good. And so, yeah, you could go. I mean, I will definitely start some lineups down here with Smith, Cantlay, Lowry. And like Byron said, I think when we're talking ownership down here, Hideki is a great play. He's had some off weeks here, like last week. He finished 18th on this course in 2015. And his driver tends to come and go, but like with Smith, he has room here. And so, we saw what he can do at Augusta. A lot of people making the Augusta comparisons. So I think he's a good play. I think Victor Hovland, I think people are down on him. His ownership's only at 6%. But I think this, for getting different, is a really good week at 9,000 to jump back on with him. Mm-hmm. The around the green play is different here. So, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing for him, we'll have to see this week. But I think he's a really good play at 9K.
Yeah, the Hovland thing is definitely interesting because it's like his betting numbers plummeted. No one's playing him at 9K, whereas, a couple months ago, and it hasn't been good golf, regardless of, the pedigree and It's not been good. There's just a lot of other guys in this range. I mean, you guys really didn't touch on Matthew Fitzpatrick, who's been playing terrific golf. Suits this course when I think of. He's not necessarily the wizard like when I think of Cam Smith or Jordan Spieth per se, but historically, short game has been really good. Obviously, the putter can get really hot, and now the added distance this year, the elite iron play, this feels like a spot for him. And then again, I can't help myself. I'm going to go to Will Zalatoris. Basically, anytime he's teeing it up, especially if he's going to be on the lower side of ownership, which he looks like he might be in this range, considering that I think Cam Smith and Xander above him probably carry a little bit of ownership. So, maybe Zal and Fitz get a little bit depressed. And I'm with you guys, echoing the Matsuyama stuff here too. So again, like to see that he played last week, even though it didn't go so well. Again, ball struck the hell out of the place in Brookline, and Zalatoris and Matsuyama, guys that we don't typically think of as like strong putters. They're really good from a 3-putt avoidance standpoint. And Ron's talked about how big these greens are. That's actually going to really matter this week. So we know that when they zoom in on Zal, when it's close, it is terrifying and it's unfair. And I wish that they would stop doing that to the poor kid, but just statistically doesn't 3-putt very often. So again, it's because he nails and he just leaves himself these 10-foot putts and 2 putts a ton of times, but isn't 3-putt very much. And that's all we can lean on here. So I'm interested in Zalatoris again. If the weather's not an issue and this just becomes a ball striking clinic, I mean, this kid obviously is wired for these events regardless of what the weather does. So love that range. We'll jump down into the 8s, also loaded, also a ton of win equity. Byron touched briefly on Sam Burns, who was a winner. This place is going to get to a spot where it becomes a driving and putting contest. I mean, even when Sam Burns wasn't winning golf tournaments, he's an elite driver of the golf ball and probably the best putter in the field as far as like the elites consistently. Love me some Sammy Burns. Would love to get your guys' thoughts there too. Louis, again, playing pretty well in Live. We know that he's familiar and does very well here and in the Open Championships. And then we get into some of the Euro guys with Hatton and Fleetwood. Start me off, Ron. Talk to me about the top of the 8s, or I guess anyone in the 8s.
Yeah, so Louis is kind of, everyone, it looks like he's probably going to be the guy. Well, DJ is getting some steam here too, but, the guy when people start to look at his history here. And that's kind of the conundrum for me is these Live guys is like, what's their motivation here? The competition over there obviously has not been as good. So when you see, Louis has 2 top 10s over there. His ball striking has been good, but how do you translate to this week? So, he's pretty low owned right now. I think at 8,800, I'm glad he's where he is, because I think if he was any lower, people would be all over him. So he's very interesting to me, someone I'm probably going to have a good deal of. Fleetwood, I don't think you can get, at 8,600, I think that's somewhat of a misprice just because, I put together kind of a links data page and, he's played the most rounds on links courses out of anybody, over 100 rounds the last, 5-6 years, gaining over 1.7 strokes per round. So he's kind of the master of these links courses. And, when you look at his history on this course, 22 career rounds, when you kind of count the Alfred Dunhill links rounds that he's played, among others, he's been under par in 21 out of 22 rounds here on this course, which, was an amazing stat that I came across. Wow. So I love him. And, Brooks Koepka, let's just talk about him real quick. So, when I ran the numbers, he's got 54 rounds since 2015 on links courses, and he is averaging 2.7 strokes per round above the field on those courses, which is just like 0.4 strokes ahead of anybody else. And so that's including even Aaron Hills. And so it's not, all these are not true seaside links courses, but, all these courses that are somewhat similar. And so, I don't think you can overlook that this week, and he's coming in at 7%. And, I wonder, is he, all the talk, everybody trashing him recently, is he going to come in here with a chip on his shoulder with something to prove? And so, yeah,
he's a
I can totally see him having a very strong performance here. So he's going to be somebody I think I'm kind of warming up to as we go here, that I'm going to be overweight on. And then I can't go without mentioning Tony Finau. I know he's getting a lot of love this week as well, but 3 recent top 5s. He was runner-up in Canada. Kind of one of the best in the field long-term when you look at around the green. I think his around the green play is very underrated. He's never finished worse than 27th in any Open. So, those are kind of, Fleetwood, Koepka, Finau, 3 guys that I really like in that mid 8K range.
Yeah, and we both bet Finau. Par 4 scoring matters a lot this week, obviously. Excuse me, there's so many of them, 14 of them. So he's popping there. Tee to green, 3-putt avoidance. Again, all these things that we are, I think, valuing statistically this week. Finau is some down the board chalk that I'm very comfortable with. I think Koepka's probably an interesting play for you, considering if you're looking to kind of build a core around Rory and Jordan, knowing that that's ownership. You're obviously getting a ton of win equity and a major track record with Brooks, and people aren't going to want to play him for numerous reasons. It hasn't been great as of late, and at the end of the day, people are making sometimes emotional decisions when they're clicking, and it's just like, hey, that guy's kind of been a D-bag of late, and the press conferences are kind of ugly, and he's kind of playing victim, and I don't want anything to do with it, and he's probably in his own head. And it's kind of like the Patrick Reed effect. Like, no one wants to play Patrick Reed, even when he's kind of in the middle of playing really good golf. And Brooks is kind of wearing that. Ironically, now he's kind of the Patrick Reed of the PGA Tour this week. So, how about you, Byron? Is there anyone here in the 8s that's kind of going to be part of your core?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Sam and Louis up at the top there. I think you can get frisky about them, and I'm kind of going to load each one for different weather. If I'm a big fan of Louis in the wind, big fan of Sam in the calmer conditions. I think if you're looking for a guy that can just absolutely steamroll with this course with putting, like you said, just pound that driver and just roll in the putts, Sam Burns is one of the best of those guys to do that. Tony Finau is absolutely popping in my model run. Like, he's 12th in my model. He's sitting all the way down in the $8,400 range. So I totally second the fact that he's a great play. Also, the ownership's not necessarily getting up there. It's a decent amount of ownership, but nothing too crazy, nothing Tommy Fleetwood-esque, which also is very warranted. I understand that. And if I am going to pivot over those two, I think Corey Connors is also a little bit of a sneaky play. The guy tends to play well in majors too, and his issue is also the one putt ability. If he can keep his own on the bigger greens, avoiding the 3 putts. That's what he's pretty good at. And then when he hits 1 to 3 feet or 5 feet, he's going to make half of them. So he does that quite regularly, though, and he's a really good driver of the golf ball, which we love to see at this venue. And then another chalkier guy is going to be Joaquin Niemann, that I'm a really big fan of at this venue too. If I'm going to probably eat some chalk, it's probably going to be him, because I think he's right there by Max Homa, who's going to be in the next tier. We can chat about him. And Joaquin's he's just got this perfect ball flight for all of these different conditions. And when these runways or these fairways are going to be concrete, that thing's just going to be scampering for a million miles. So love to see Joaquin. He makes a bunch of birdies, especially down in the bottom range. There's not a lot of guys that make that many birdies, and he's one of those dudes. So love him, and he's nice and cheap too, which is obviously why.
If we get into a spot where this course theoretically gets broken, people are just absolutely bombing. It's playing hard and fast, and it's running. We have guys that have the ability to drive some of these par 4s. Bryson's $8,100. And I know that it hasn't been great as of late. He was 10th at Live. He hit the ball a mile. Again, some of the short game stuff over the last year or so hasn't been great. He hasn't had, he's the anti-Spieth, right? He hasn't been really strong around the green, scrambling, and the putting's not been great. But we've seen that putter at times. It's been his weapon. Like, he's like literally Sam Burns on steroids, where it's like it's driving and putting. $8,100. It's mispriced in comparison to some of the guys that are out there, but then theoretically, like, I feel like it's also Bryson DeChambeau. It's like he's already broken a major championship venue before. Am I crazy, Ron? Like, again, if we're looking at 5-6% ownership on Bryson, like, it seems like if someone's just going to go out and actually drive or put himself within, I guess the false fronts of a bunch of these par 4s, that's Bryson.
Yeah, and the rough here is very short. So I think when you think about like Wingfoot, the rough obviously was much thicker there. So Short rough, yes, he's going to bomb it really close. Obviously, his short wedge approach game is still kind of his big weakness here. But like you said, though, his putting, like when I ran the putting numbers, even the lag putting, I did a 3-putt percentage from 25 plus feet as well. He rates out really high in just about everything putting wise. And so if you're looking at bombing it off the course and turning that into a putting game after that, yeah, I can totally see, him having some success here at 4%. So the big question is just, can he get enough birdie chances from close enough proximity? So that wedge game is kind of the question for me. So, I don't think that's crazy at all. And I think, especially from my perspective, if I'm playing a lot of these chalky guys up top, he's definitely a guy to mix in. Now, I don't know if I want to go Koepka and Bryson in the same lineups. If I want to get really interesting, but that could be a wild ride. So we'll see.
Well, look at the early tee time for Bryson helps him too, I think, because here's what's going to happen in the betting market, right? He's 130. I took him at 130, which is wild. There's 110s out there. If he shows up early and we're through 9 holes and he looks like Bryson, that live number is going to be like it was Bryson last year. That live number is going to plummet into the 20s, right? It's not going to be what would happen to a normal guy who's priced above 100. So again, like from a DFS, from a game theory standpoint, we don't know until the cards turn over, but we have a pretty good idea of projected ownership. Like he's not going to be 10% owned, and there is an out where he is going to be like, you can get 10% Bryson in your lineups and you're double the field. I think it's a pretty smart play, especially if you are building up top and eating some of the chalk elsewhere. Like you said, you want to go Rory. It's the same premise of Rory, right? If we think that Rory can go and do this because the driver is elite, like having some sort of correlation between Rory and Bryson, I think makes a ton of sense. So again, you're also going to know by the time you wake up that he is dead to rights, right? And you're, 10% of your lineups are probably dead. But
wait, did you say waking up? You mean you're not staying up for this?
I mean, I will, but I want to be, I don't sleep anyway. My, son doesn't value sleep or need it. So I'll be up. But the reality is that some of our listeners are smarter than I am, and they do sleep. This is what happens when you don't sleep. You start to look like this. But like, I think you just have a massive amount of leverage with a guy that has a profile. And like, maybe I think he's had kind of the right, maybe it's also narrative based. His mindset, kind of the things we've heard from him from a live standpoint. Like, I do think he just is trying to get out there. I still think he wants to be the best golfer. I think all those things that make Bryson, like I think he's over there because he can cash massive checks and control that, whatever. He still wants to go out and be the best. And these are maybe one of the last opportunities for him to compete against everyone and show that is kind of who he is. So I'm very much interested in him. Again, doesn't have to be a massive part of your core, but 10, 15% of Bryson in your lineups, you're, in an advantageous point if he starts to get things clicking.
Yeah. And we're playing DFS, which is a points-based game, right?
Correct.
And if he's going to be driving at just the fringe of a green and puts a long putt in for an eagle, you can make 2 bogeys, and you're still up on a few guys, So it's all about that too. I think he's a massive point scorer when it comes to DFS, and eagles and birdies are, the eagle side of things without any par 5s are going to be tough to come by. So if he's driving green somehow, he's in business. So I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
All right, guys, the 7's massive tier. So we'll cut it in half. We'll go 7-9 to 7-5 here. I feel like Max Homa should probably be one of the highest owned players on the slate. It doesn't look like he is going to be. I don't know where the weaknesses are in his game. Went out last week in the Scottish Open, was on the wrong side of the weather wave, and still played terrific golf. He is statistically better than any other year in his career in every strokes gained metric. He has made massive strides as a player. Again, we need long and straight. That's kind of Max Homa. The putting can be really hot, and he has improved massively over the last couple months around the green too. So like, I have fewer concerns around Max Homa. Cam Young is a guy that no one's going to be talking about too. We're building a Rory, Bryson, Cam Young lineup where like long and straight, we were all playing Cam Young into massive chalk a couple of weeks ago, and we had a couple of crooked numbers, and let some people down into chalk, and now no one wants to play him. We have 5% Cam Young again, who also can be driving these greens here. So you're going to have guys here. Bobby Mack is going to be very popular. Leishman, I think, makes a lot of sense. He's not going to be as owned as I think he is. Interested to see what you guys think. And then obviously we get down into the Tiger Woods area. So Ron, I'll start with you. Talk to me about the top of the sevens.
So yeah, you can't go wrong with Homa. Obviously his, ownership seems like it's jumping by the minute. People are falling in love with him. I think he's probably the biggest misprice, in my opinion, on the whole slate here at only 7,900. I think Cameron Young is a guy who, again, if you're getting chalky other places, he kind of last week, kind of one of his first links experiences at the Scottish Open. And so, with that under his belt, just another young guy, but, like you said, he's shown it in the last few months, just that he can go anywhere, he can play anywhere. So, kind of similar with Victor Hovland, is this kind of a week to jump back on him? I think at 5%, I think that's a great play. At the same price, Robert McIntyre, Scottish born, he has been struggling mightily lately. He, even last week on a course that he loves, did not play well, but he always seems to perform so well in these majors. In the two opens he's played in, he's finished 6th and he's finished 8th. So I think McIntyre also coming in at 5%. People are kind of down on him. His price seems way too high, but I think obviously that's one of the reasons his ownership is so low. So he's something that's really interesting to me. I've heard a lot of good reports coming from Adam Scott's camp about how good he looks. When you think about this, over the past decade, 4 players have won who are over 40 years old. And so age really isn't much of a factor here. And I think Adam Scott, his ball striking ability, his form has been improving of late. I think he's a really sneaky play at 7,700. Once we get down past that, though, this is kind of like a dead range to me until we get to the low 7s. I know people are talking Leishman, but he's missed 3 of his last 4 cuts. I just don't have a lot of faith in him right now. So until we get lower here in the lower 7s, it's pretty much those couple guys on that top range for me.
How about you, Byron? What do you like here at the top?
Max Homa is one of my outrights that I bet on. I've got a top 40 bet on him at plus 100, and I don't think I'm going to play him because I did all of that betting without knowing he's going to play with his hero, Tiger Woods.
I know.
And I was just so disappointed when I heard that. I don't think Max is, but I know that I am, because if I got to play with Ryan Noonan or Ryan Klos, I know my game wouldn't be that good. So
now you destroy us, I think.
Very, very, very concerned about Max's nerves, and I think his ownership is trending. I think he started off a little slow, but people are catching on. The more shows you watch, the more things like this people watch, they realize Max is horribly mispriced. The guy should be up in the upper 8s, and he's 79. He's not even 8K, he's 7,900, which is even worse. So I've got him as a red labeled guy. Just absolutely no-go zone for me. Love everything about him apart from the fact that he's playing with the cat, and that just seems like it's just too much going on. Those crowds are going to be exorbitant, So, and the same goes for Matty Fitz, who I don't think is going to be as impacted, but he's also playing with those 3. So that's an interesting situation there that you're going to have to. It's going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. Cameron Young, got him highlighted. Love that. He's the same. Just type in the nukes. Let's go. If he can get himself a few eagle putts, let's rock and roll there. And then we're going to jump to the whole other side of the spectrum and go Webb Simpson and Abraham Ancer. One of them a live guy, the other guy playing some good golf. Just the putter hasn't necessarily been there with Webb's game. He's a shorter guy, but his wedges are just fantastic. That's one of the strengths of his game. And if he's going to be hitting it shorter to those wedge ranges, he's going to be putting them tight. So it's all about his putter, really. And we know that can spike at any moment in time. And then another guy I'm a big fan of that I'm probably going to eat the chalk of is Seamus Power. He's also one of the mispriced golfers in this tier.
Yeah.
He's played 3 majors already this year. He's only 3 majors he's played in his life. He's made the cut in all 3, including at Augusta, which is a very difficult thing to do. Now he's playing in Scotland. He's from Ireland. He's playing some of the best golf of his life in a major. So, sign me up for Seamus Power at $7,400. That seems like one of the more safer plays you can get in this lower range here. a big fan. He's right under the Tiger Woods number there too, which I think could steal a bit of ownership as people start seeing more pictures and videos of Tiger playing. They'll click him. So I'm a big fan of Seamus, and it's going to be a fun watch for him too.
Yeah, Tiger thing is just a no-go. We're all avoiding Tiger. Knowing that the projected ownership is always a little off. When the cards turn over, it's always higher.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah.
Especially at this venue. I mean, we got the flat narrative. He's been playing the whole week. His leg's okay, blah, blah, blah. You know, like,
favorite
am I going to retire?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. What are you talking about? He's all over the news. People are going to click his name. So happy to go to Seamus underneath him there for sure.
You think Ron Tiger part of the pool?
It's really interesting because, you know, he's played so many holes the last few days, and you know how much this means to him. I think experience on this course means a lot, and of course he's got probably more of it than anybody. So at that price, you know, I don't see him getting too high on, because I think there's a large camp of people who are also kind of like you two, who are just like, nope, not doing it. You know, people think about the leg. So I think to be above ownership is not a bad play here if you can get there. So I haven't made a final decision on my player pool yet as far as whether he'll be in it. But if he is, you know, I will try to double whatever that ownership is. But just backing to what Byron said about Seamus, you know, it's not that he just made the cuts in the last three majors. Like, he's finished 9th, 12th, 27th. And, you know, it's interesting because he grew up in, obviously he's from Ireland, so he grew up on these courses, but he's only played 12 rounds on links courses pretty much in his whole career, because he never really went over to the European Tour and played much. But he does kind of thrive on these shorter courses. And of course he's got a great short game. So, you know, he's a guy who I think even at this lower part of the board, you know, around 12% owned, you know, that I'm not really worried about that as much down here. I think Christian Bezuidenhout is a really good play this week. You know, he's a cut maker, even if he's the last guy in your lineup. He's a guy who's really consistent in majors. He's made 7 of 10 cuts. Of course, everybody just saw how good he played at the John Deere, finishing runner-up. He's 5th in overall proximity on the tour. So when you just look at overall proximity to the hole, you know, his approach game has really come on lately. And of course, he's really good with the short game. So I think Bezuidenhout, really good play. And probably the live guy I'm going to play the most. And I remember we talked about him weeks ago, Patrick Reed. So, you know, you kind of saw flashes of it in the Portland event. You know, he finished 3rd there. Short game magic. He rarely 3-putts. So just when you're considering, you know, these huge greens, the whole creativity angle, you know, he finished 20th here on this course in 2015. So he has some experience here. Again, he is the kind of player who's going to really take advantage of the rollout on the fairways, because, you know, his driving distance has really gone down. But again, as bouncy as these fairways are, you know, I think that's going to be a huge advantage to him. And again, he's another player who tends to miss left. And so again, it's kind of all lining up for him. And people forget, like, he's 3 of 3 in making cuts in majors this year. So it's not like he's just dropped off the map. So I think at 7,300, when you consider his past Open history, you know, he finished 12th at Troon. He was 10th at Portrush. If you go back to Shinnecock, which was a kind of a similar coastal course, you know, he finished 4th at that U.S. Open. So I just think there's a lot here to back up, you know, him playing really well this week.
Anytime we get into the Magic Beans guys, obviously Patty Reed is that, right? The shot makers, the creativity around the greens. He's definitely one of those guys. There's going to be one guy down here, Byron, that's really popular, and he fits our lineup. It is Ryan Fox. Yes. Also hits it a mile, right? So we got Rory, we got Bryson, Cam Young, Ryan Fox. We figure the rest out. These dudes just overpower this course. It looks like Fox is going to be owned, though, Byron. Is there any interest there? And then talk to me about the bottom of the 7K range.
I don't know if I'm going to go Foxy's way. You know, especially if I'm going to go with Seamus eating a lot of that ownership, probably not. But if you don't go Seamus, cool. If you really believe in Fox, especially after last week when we got hit with a massive ownership tag and a bigger price, now he's lower priced, I think, and less owned, hopefully. hits at a country mile. You can add Gary Woodland into the mix there, right underneath him too. Then we got the nuke squad, and they'll just be going for days. So I do agree there, but you can go Sahith as well. We just made it into the lineups a little bit later. But I have 3 other guys up top that I want to discuss about. Taylor Gooch is one of them. He's also another live dude. He's got a very tidy short game, but he's also a giant tool. I mean, after all of his comments on Facebook or Twitter and stuff, he's the reason people went to live, right? So Taylor Gooch, I don't know. I don't like him as a guy, but he's going to hopefully pad my pockets. Everything about his game suits this course quite nicely. And then a real nice guy is Russell Henley. Russell Henley is getting grossly overlooked. He's one of the best ball strikers in the world. Very, very tidy short game when it comes to around the green stuff. The putting, bit of a concern. But everything else about his game is just exceptional. He's $7,200. He's going to be like 3% owned. What are we doing there? Why? Absolutely not. He's like top 20 in my model, sitting at $7,200. Let's go Russell Henley. And the same thing for Keegan Bradley. Keegan's irons in the last 12 rounds are first on tour. And we've got Justin Thomas, we've got Colin Morikawa, we've got Cam Smith, we've got all those boys in this field, and Keegan's out ball striking them over the last 12 rounds. The putter has shown some life. Recently, it's kind of on life support. So we'll see what's going on there, because I don't know how Aim Point Express works on these big greens, but he's very good at 3-putt avoidance, which is, just everything about his game suits this golf course to a T. So I love those 3 guys, even though I'm not a fan of one of them. I think they'll be in a lot of my lineups.
Yeah, Russell Henley is always going to pop from a modeling standpoint when you're looking at anything with approach. He's just so consistently good doing that.
But he's around the green games also very, very good.
Yeah. No, he's without a doubt. Yeah. Without a doubt. Aaron Wise is of interest to me.
Oh, here
probably
we go.
A shocker.
What?
I don't know if you guys name I don't talk about often, but do like a little bit of his form. Again, really, if you look at anything other than 3-putt avoidance, just from a ball striking standpoint, driving distance is nice. Sometimes he's fairly accurate with it as well. Obviously, the approach game and off the tee, he's been fairly terrific since basically February, and then the swing season too. So Aaron Wise is definitely in the player pool for me. Is there anyone else down here at the very bottom before we go dumpster diving for you, Ron, that you want to mention?
Yeah, so just really quick. So a little counterpoint to Byron there on Fox. So I think this week on DraftKings, with a major, you kind of have so many drive-by players who, they're going to see the name Ryan Fox and they're not going to have a clue who he is. And so I think you may not see as high ownership as you might think, especially with his poor week last week. So I think when you look at the links stats over the years, he's a really good player on these types of courses. And so I just think, kind of like we talked about with the whole Bryson, Rory, being able to bomb away off the tee here potentially. He's got so much experience on these types of links courses as far as the firm conditions. So I think he's a really good play this week. Obviously, the value is definitely there at only 7,100. With Wise, like you said, like when you look at the numbers, like off the tee, approach, even if you look at his kind of course suitability, like he's really good on these coastal links courses. He also plays much better in strong fields than weaker fields. So for me at 7K, like he's a guy at somewhat low ownership still, and even if I kind of looked also at, Data Golf, they do their true strokes gained. When you look over the last 20 rounds, like he's 8th in the entire field over the last 20 rounds in strokes gained total, which is obviously weighted for schedule strength or field strength, I should say. So, a couple other guys, if the wind picks up, I think Gary Woodland's a great play. He's one of the best wind players in this field. And going with the bomb and gouge type thing, well, actually not much gouging because the rough isn't that bad, but just the whole distance thing. I think Thomas Peters, he's had his struggles on and off, but another European player with lots of links course experience, and again a very low price tag for him. So those are a couple other guys I like down there.
Yeah, last 36 rounds, strokes gained tee to green. Aaron Wise is 11th in this field, which is remarkable. This is a great field. It's all there for the kid, so it's only a matter of time till he gets back in that winner's circle. All right, Byron, dumpster diving. We're below 6K. We're going to need these guys, especially if we are getting into the Rory, or I guess, Rory top tier, mostly. Scotty, I know for you. And again, it's a major. So sometimes, we have more 6K guys that are viable than most weeks. Who are some of the guys that are catching your eye or popping in your model?
Yeah, the banana peel on top of the dumpster lid that I forgot to mention at 7K is Kevin Na. Absolutely sensational with his wedges.
Yeah.
Great around the green game. Makes a ton of birdies when he's playing well. 7K, not going to be owned at all.
Yep. Then
somebody that should not be doing any dumpster diving is Chris Kirk. Don't know what he's doing in the 6K range. He's looking at mid, like 5% ownership maybe. What on earth's going on there? This guy's one of the better players in the field too. Just very, very consistent dude. Going to keep just hitting that little ropey draw down the fairway. Very, very tidy around the greens. Very good with the 3-putt avoidance. Beautiful stuff from Chris Kirk. Going to be in a lot of my lineups, especially at $6,800. Stuart Sink is another guy that's a lot more risky, but he can make a lot of birdies. If this course gets playing to a minus 20 under par kind of situation, Stuart Sink is one of the $6,800 guys that I think can definitely find himself at the top of the leaderboard. He's also won one of these things before, so hello there.
Still hits it far.
Hits it a country mile. Yeah, I think his son kicked his butt a little bit and said, Dad, it's time to start moving, So I think ever since his son came on the bag, that's when it kind of came into the mix. So He hits it a long way, which is exactly what you're looking for. Yeah, and he's also from a 3-putt perspective, he's actually not that good, but whatever. You're not going to worry about that. He's $6,800. Love that. Dean Burmester. I got a few South African guys, Dean Burmester and Justin Harding. Both hit it kind of far, especially Burmester. He led the Scottish Open in driving distance last week. So he's another guy you can throw into the nuke squad there if you're looking for a little cheaper dude. And then Emiliano Grillo is a guy we mentioned on the last podcast that was a beauty of a find. And he's $6,700 and he hits it quite nicely from tee to green too. So if you can avoid the around the green stuff, you're going to be putting a lot more than chipping. Love to see that from Emiliano Grillo. Wyndham Clark, another name. I'm just going to rattle off a few here. Zach Johnson and Richard Bland, two of the shorter hitting guys that you can kind of put in the Kevin Na bucket with some really good wedge play and some good putting, which I think you can really, really get behind. And then Brandon Wu and Jamie Donaldson are two guys that made it into this event from last week's performances, showing some good current form. Obviously played very well on this kind of course. Look at last week, and they are $6,300 and $6,100 and barely owned too. So that's my dumpster. It's kind of full. I'm a big fan of it this week. I'm embracing the volatility, and it will allow me to go with a few Tony Finau's and maybe a Tommy Fleetwood or two up top there.
Love it, though. I think it does make sense to diversify down here. I don't know what your thoughts are, Ron, but again, you don't want to go too heavy on one of these guys that's down here for a reason for the most part. I think kind of anchoring to some guys that are a little bit higher up, some guys that we actually think can actually go out and win this event. Being way over the field with those guys makes a lot more sense than it does for, kind of just grabbing one or two guys down here and anchoring to them. Grillo is a guy that I'm very interested in. Again, the Grillo thing could be super painful sometimes, but recent form has been pretty decent. T2 last time out at John Deere, and then I think was 12th at Royal St. George's last year. So sometimes the ball striking kind of clicks and things are really nice for him. So like him quite a bit. Ron, what's some of the looks for you here down in the 6Ks?
So when you go from 7K down to about 6-7, like this to me is like mix and match heaven, because there's so many guys that you can, like you said, not go like super overweight on, but if you can get 5 to 10% and kind of mix around here, even when you look at going back to the 7K, Cameron Tringali, we saw what he did, even though most of it was with the short game at the Scottish Open. I think he's too low priced. Harris English is getting healthy. He's been kind of positive 3 of his last 4. Of course, he's got a really good short game, which is going to play here as well. Brian Harman had his struggles, but he's another one with an elite short game. He's really good on these shorter par 4 holes. He actually leads the field in 3-putt avoidance when you go back 50 rounds. I think Hao Tung Lee is kind of one of these boomer bust high upside guys. Kind of one of my strategies I'm going to try to have this week is where I have at least 3 guys in my lineup who have winning equity, like higher tier guys. And then if you can mix and match with a guy like a Hao Tung Lee who could win, now he's probably not going to win, but he has the potential to spike. He's a very underrated links player. He's averaging almost 1 stroke per round in these links courses. He's trending upwards. Of course, he just won the BMW over there in Europe. He finished 3rd at the Open in 2017. So I think he's the kind of guy, and you could kind of throw Keith Mitchell in there as well. You know, when you look at over the past 20 rounds, he's 9th in the entire field in strokes gained total over the last 20. So, you know, I think he's a guy who, again, didn't play well last week, but who's kind of underpriced at 6,900. Lucas Herbert is another guy who, you know, one of the best putters, one of the best lag putters in this field. So I think Lucas Herbert's another guy who makes a lot of sense. And then Mackenzie Hughes is the other guy I'll mention down here. You know, he always seems to rise to the occasion in these kind of tough conditions. In majors, he's actually made the cut in his last 4 majors and finished 6th at the Open last year. So I think there's a lot of different ways you can mix and match players down here and have some confidence. And I think another thing that needs to be mentioned is, you know, it's the top 70 in ties that are going to make it through this week. So a lot of these guys down here have a legitimate chance of making it through the cut, because when I first saw the field, I think I cut it down to 100 just right off the bat, because there's a large group of, you know, 50 or so players in there who, you know, you can kind of cut out pretty much right away. And so for me, you're talking about the 100 guys I'm looking at, you know, 70 of them are going to make the cut. And so, you know, I think you can get a little bit riskier down here as far as maybe even being a little more overweight, just with that in mind.
Yeah, there are a ton of guys in this field that I've never heard of. So, and feel pretty plugged in and watch, you know, a fair amount of Euro Tour, and there just are a lot of names down here. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a creative player, and there could whoop my butt. So, you know, no disrespect to these guys, but you know, from a DFS standpoint, from a, you know, top 70 in ties standpoint, I get Ron's point and what he's trying to say down here. We can go down to the Barbasol winner, $6,200 Trey Mullinex, to round out our bomb and gouge team. He hits it an absolute mile. He's flying over in some really good form. That's 5 guys. So if you're following, you just need to find one of your own. We give you 5 absolute bomb guys to drive the greens. If that's in play this week, those guys are all very, very much.
Now, really quick, what about Joo-Hyun Kim? Byron, you got any interest? I know people are going to be on him a little bit after last week.
I missed the boat entirely on him, so I'm out. I missed the boat. I'm netting at sail. It is what it is.
Yeah, he's like, when you look at his
Florida
numbers,
chase.
Like, he's only 6,500, you know, and he's, you know, finished third last week. So people are going to have some interest in him, but, you know, he was actually 23rd at the US Open, you know, a young guy who, you know, I think if you're looking to go higher up top, you know, I think him and the last guy I'll say is, I think Thomas Dietrich kind of fits that bomber profile too. Had a good week last week. Really good on links courses. So those are kind of probably the 2 lowest guys I will go to, but I think those are 2 really good plays that you could get to.
Yeah, might have missed the mark, but yeah, when you look at Kim's finishing track record over the last calendar year or so, there's a lot of top level finishes. Again, he's playing mostly on the Asian tour, but a few, you know, comes over to the Byron Nelson T17. You know, obviously the US Open, Scottish Open, those are strong fields. So there could be something there. But again, like, I feel like if you're playing that into any ownership, it gets a little bit dicey. But down at 6'5", to Ron's point, similar to Ryan Fox, your average person is probably not messing around with, you know, $6,500 Tim Kim, or Tom Kim. Question from Rich: with the greens being so bigger, guys looking at approach performance putting stats. Yeah, I saw someone referencing that. I am, now that you're talking about Trey Mullinex. I saw someone referencing that on Twitter yesterday, and I looked at it a little bit. Is that a stat, Ron, that you've ever really incorporated into your stuff?
No, and here's why I don't like it, because it takes every distance equally. So you could have a 6-foot putt that you miss, and you miss it by 1 inch, and that goes into that stat. So if it was approach putting performance from 50 plus feet, I think that would be a lot more relevant. But when you have all these, you know, shorter putts mixed into that average, you know, I have seen people talking about that, but I don't think that's really, in my opinion at least, it's not relevant, because there's just so much noise from, it doesn't tell you how long the putt's coming from. So I think if we could one day get that broken up into tiers, I think that'd be much more relevant.
Look for that on the website in the splits tool in 2025.
Oh, no, much sooner than that.
Oh, okay. Ron pushing the dev team. All right. We'll start with a top tier guy and a lower tier guy. I'll let you guys set those arbitrary benchmarks. Byron, I'll start with you. Give me a guy that is going to be part of your core from the top and a guy a little bit lower down as part of your core this week.
I think I'm going to go with Scotty. I can't help but go back to him. He's just so sensational when it comes to majors, and I think he's going to be kind of left alone after last week. He's away from John Rahm again, like I've said, and I'm a big fan of Scotty in just any sort of format. The guy can travel more than LeBron James in a playoff. But anyway, Seamus Power is another guy at $7,400. Going to be as owned as Scotty Scheffler, in my opinion. I'm obsessed with Seamus. I think he's just got such a great game. Can play in any situation. Lots of birdies. If you're trying to avoid bogeys, he's got all of that in his bag. So love him.
Love it. How about you, Ron? What are you looking at?
Yeah, Spieth. I might be 50% on Spieth this week. That's how much I like him. So definitely over-owned on him. Getting towards the bottom, I do agree with Power. I do love him. So I'll go 100 lower, and Patrick Reed is going to be my guy down here that I'll probably be the most over-owned on.
Love it. I just kind of have guys that are always my guys, and I feel like I ride and die with those players. They seem, in my mind, to fit this week. If people are scared about Justin Thomas's back, I think that's terrific. I'm not super worried about JT's back. This is going to get into a spot where the putter can run hot, and then we really need like these elite short iron play. There's really no one better in the world than Justin Thomas from 100 yards in. So I love JT. Max Homa is cheating because he should not be down there. But I'll also go with Mark Leishman. I don't think the form recently is great, so I think the ownership is going to be depressed quite a bit. He's been talking about this event like in every presser for like 3 months. Like he felt that he left that one on the table back in 2015. He cannot wait to get back here. Again, I do think that there is some form of like corollary between Augusta and this place, and he's played well over in the Masters the last handful of years. Again, I think he can get really hot with the putter. Short game can go nice. So I'm not worried about the form. Again, if people are a little bit worried about those things, I think those guys will kind of a little bit off the beaten path this week. So mixing it up, those will be my guys for the week. So Ron, what is coming from you still on the site?
Yeah, final betting article, DFS, and then first round leader, all that stuff, hopefully as soon as possible tomorrow. Again, with the weather, it is an earlier tee time, so keep that in mind, but also trying to wait as long as possible, but I'll be out as soon as possible on sometime tomorrow.
Again, and if you missed it at the top, Byron is a fixture here moving forward. He and Ron will be taking the reins here of the DFS show every week. Fantastic pairing. We're very excited to have Byron on board in a permanent role here and all of his stuff. Byron, where can everyone find what you have coming out from a content standpoint?
Yep, just grab me at the Model Maniac. All my stuff's posted over there. I got my Breaking 100 article that I just got done before we got on the show, and then I'll do my podcast tonight, Back 9 Bets, so we kind of go through some bets that I've got. I've got 10 top 20, top 40 bets this week, which I think are 7 of them are top 40s, which I'm kind of looking forward to. So it's going to be a fun week.
Love it. It's going to be a fun week. Betting article still to come from me. We can find some time to write that, but it is, you can get into the Discord, $1 a month, betspertsgolf.com. Go to the plan section, $1 a month all the way until December, till the Tournament of Champions.
Right? Let's not forget about Prize Picks, Ryan. Your Prize Pick success, 3 in a row, Ryan hit.
Yes,
so yeah, we're going to keep posting those as well.
Yep, we have a free Prize Picks channel in the Discord. Prize Pick articles go up on the site. That's all free, regardless of if you take the $1 sub. But take the $1 sub. Come play around with the tools. Tell us what we need to improve on. Tell us what we need to fix. We're babies. It's our infancy here from a tool standpoint over at betspertsgolf.com. From a handicapping and DFS standpoint, we've been playing forever. But from a tool standpoint, we want you to come in, break the stuff. Some things maybe we didn't see, we missed. Come over, play around with it. Hopefully it can tighten up your process. And again, we're expanding on all those every day and every week. We're trying to make sure that this is going to be a core piece of your content and lineup building moving forward. So for Ron and Byron, I'm Ryan. We'll see you all next week. Good luck, everyone.